Dear students, welcome to the class on Advanced Computer Architecture. So in this Advanced Computer Architecture, we are going to study about three keywords that is there in the textbook. That is parallelism, scalability and programmability. So the Advanced Computer Architecture is a subject in which we are going to study different type of architectures what are influencing our present computer system. We know that in this age the computers are very much part of everybody's life, and so here we are going to study different architectures of that. Parallel processing, if you can see, we are using parallel computer models. So parallel processing, it is used so that we can go for saving the cost, and we can go for higher productivity and also higher performance in many applications. Parallelism is viewed as look ahead computing, pipeline processing, vectorization, concurrency, simultaneity, data parallelism, partitioning, interleaving, etc. etc. We can achieve parallelism by many ways. So here we are going to see that what are the different models and what are the different architectures of the parallel computers, the vector supercomputers, the multiprocessors, multi-computers and parallel processors. Theoretical machine models, here they are presented are the parallel random access machines and the complexity model of very large scale integration circuits, that is VLSI circuits. So here we can also see that there will be some case studies also, and then we will see how actually the hardware and the software subsystems are helping us for the detailed study of the architecture. So at the end of this particular chapter, you will be able to see what are the historical milestones in the development of the computers and the difference between multiprocessors and multi-computers, how the supercomputers and parallel processors are used for vector processing and data parallelism, the role of the parallel random access machines and VLSI models, and also the importance of the architectural development tracks. So the first subtopic is the state of computing. Computers are equipped with hardware facilities which are driven by the software packages. If I want to assess or if I want to understand the state of art computing, that means how actually the system computes, first we have to go for the historical milestones in the development of the computers. Then we are going to see the crucial hardware and software elements which are built into the modern computer system. Then we will examine the evolutionary relations in milestone architectural development. At last, we are going to see the hardware and the software factors which are used for analyzing the performance of the computers. So the state of computing is divided into 4 subsections, and all these subsections are understood for the state of computing, how actually the computers are used. Before 1945, the computers were made up of mechanical or electromechanical parts. Since we were using these mechanical and electromechanical parts, the speed as well as the reliability of the computers was very limited. So it may be the system which was given by Blaise Pascal in 1642, that is the mechanical adder and subtractor. Charles Babbage designed another difference engine in 1827. Konrad Zuse, he built the first binary mechanical computer in 1941. Howard Aiken, he has given the electromechanical decimal computer. And then we have the IBM machine by Harvard Mark. All these machines, they had the limitations of the speed and reliability because of the mechanical and electromechanical parts. But now the modern computers, they are having only electronic components. All the moving parts, they are replaced by high mobility electrons, and so now the information transmission is almost at the speed of light. Over the past several decades, the computers have gone through roughly 5 generations of development. So the division of the generations here, it is marked by the significant changes what is going to happen in the hardware and the software industry or the technology. So most features what are introduced here in the previous generations, they will be passed on to the next generation. So every generation, it will be having its own set of the technological developments, and then it is going to lead us to a more compact, less expensive and powerful, efficient and robust machines. So in the computer development milestone, the first generation of computers, it was between 1945 and 1954. So we can categorize these computers as the first generation computers, which are based on vacuum tubes and relay memories. And the program counter and the accumulator, they were used for driving the CPU. And the logic what was used here is the fixed point arithmetic. The software was, it was only recognizing the machine or the assembly language. A single user could use this one, and there was no subroutine linkage. That means there was no sub-processing and all. And then we had the programmed input and output by making use of the CPU. Some of the examples of this particular era are the UNIVAC and the ENIAC machines, the Princeton IAS, the IBM 701. So the UNIVAC, it was used for the US Census Bureau. For that purpose, this was used as the commercial computer. Next came the second generation of computers, of course, which were better than the first generation computers. Here the technology used was the discrete transistors and core memories, and then it was also doing the floating point arithmetic. It was an improvement over the fixed point arithmetic. Then we also had the input and output processors, multiplexed memory access. The software, it improved from the machine language to the high level language, which was used with the compilers. Subroutines could be used. We had a big library of the subroutines, and also the batch processing was enabled. We could do multiple work at the same time in a batch, so that is called as batch processing. Some of the examples of this particular generation are IBM 7090, CDC 1604, and then a variation of the UNIVAC, which was LARC machine. So the transistor driven machines here, they were storing the instructions into the memories, that is they were moving from the drum to the core technology. So these versions, they were developed for the atomic energy industry. At the same time, several high level languages like COBOL and Fortran, they came into picture. And in this generation of computers, it was making use of the punched card for giving the input and also the taking the output. So there was a big improvement from the vacuum tube to the transistors in this particular generation. The third generation computers, they made use of the integrated circuits, that is small scale integration and medium scale integration. Here we had the microprogramming, pipelining, cache and look ahead processor technology. Multi-programming and time-sharing operating systems came into picture, and also multi-users were able to use many applications on the system. Some of the examples of this one are IBM 360 and 370 machine, CDC 6600, TI ASC and PDP 8. So the transistors also improved a lot, and then we are going for the semiconductors, and which has led to multiple chips on the same circuit board, and the speed and the efficiency of these machines improved a lot. So the first computers which were used here by using the keyboards and the monitors, it was interfaced with the operating system, and it was a big leap from the punch cards to the printouts. In the fourth generation of computers, the large scale integration and very large scale integration and semiconductor memories were used. The multiprocessors, the vector supercomputers, and the multi-computers were used in the fourth generation. Here, the software used was the multiprocessor operating system and multiprocessor languages, compilers, and environments which are used for parallel processing. Some of the examples for this are the VAX 9000, Cray XMP, IBM 3090, BBN TC 2000, and others. So in this fourth generation of computers, the increased power of the small computers, they were used for creating the networks. So because of these networks, we had the internet, and then also the graphical user interface, the usage of the mouse, and also the laptops came into picture in this. We also had the handheld devices which were very small and compact and comfortable to use. The chips which was first used was the 4004 chip that was used for processing 4 bits, and then it was improvised a lot after that. In the fifth generation of the computers, advanced VLSI processors, memory and switches, high density packaging, and scalable architectures were introduced. The superscalar processors, and also we had multiple systems on one chip, and there was massively parallel processing, and very challenging applications and heterogeneous processing also were done in this generation. It started. So we also had artificial intelligence come into picture in this particular generation of computers. And then we also had the voice recognition, and the quantum computation, molecular and nanotechnology, all these were introduced in the fifth generation, which made the computer very fast and versatile. So in these technologies, the response to the natural language, and also the system was able to understand and learn and organize itself. So after this, almost all the computers also, it was having the capabilities which were improvised more and more. Now we will see the elements of the modern computers with respect to the parallel processing. So we know that the hardware, software, and the programming elements are part of the modern computer system, along with the instruction set, application program, and also the software and the interfaces. This is a picture which is illustrating the elements of a modern computer system. Of course, any computer system, it is driven by problems. So once we know the nature of the problems, then the solution will require different computing resources. So the problem it may make use of the algorithms, data structures, which are written in the high level languages, which has to be combined with the application softwares, which are making use of the operating system, and which are driven by the hardware architecture. Of course, we can evaluate the performance of the system, and then we can go for improvising it. So all these things, it doesn't mean that only we have to go for thinking of the architecture as the hardware. Architecture is not only hardware, it is a system which is going to improve the overall performance of the system. So the computer, it is going to integrate the hardware, the instructions, the softwares, the application programs, and also the user interfaces, so that the overall system can perform to its best capacity. So these are the system elements which are being depicted here, so that we can go for solving any real life problems, and we are going to achieve cost effective solutions by making use of the ideal hardware and the software. For the problems in the science and technology, which are numericals, the solutions will actually require mathematical formulations and multiple integer and floating point computations, which are very intense. For some alphanumerical problems in business and government, we may require transaction processing where the solutions will be demanding the efficient working of the processing. We may require a large database management and also information retrieval operations. Also, for the artificial intelligence problems, the solutions will be requiring the logical inferences and symbolic manipulations. All these computing problems, they have been labeled as numerical computing, transaction processing and logical reasoning. And many complex problems, they may require a combination of mix of all these processing modes. So these computing capabilities are required by the modern computers, which will be supported by the software as well as the hardware. In the modern computers, the special algorithms and data structures are required for solving the computations and the communications in the computing problems. Problems can be either deterministic, that is, it can make use of a structured data, or it can make use of heuristics or non-deterministic data. And it can also have a large knowledge base. So the problem formulation and the development of the parallel algorithms, it will require multiple interdisciplinary interactions among multiple people like the theoreticians, experimentalists, computer programmers and scientists. So different ways we can deal with this mapping of the algorithms of the heuristics into parallel computers. In this particular book, that is in this approach, so we are more concerned about the resources which are mapping problem than about the design and analysis of the parallel algorithms. That means we are more concentrating on how we are going to map the problem with the resources with the given architecture. In the diagram we had seen that the architecture is surrounded by the operating system, which in turn is surrounded by the application software. That means the architecture depends on the operating system as well as the application softwares. So here the processors, memory and the peripheral devices, they are going to form the hardware core of the computer system. And then the instruction set processors, memory organization, multiprocessors, supercomputers, multicomputers, all this they will be part of the parallel computers. The special hardware interfaces, they have to be built into input-output devices such as the display terminals, workstations, optical page scanners, magnetic ink character recognizers and so many other type of input-output devices. All these peripherals, they will be connected to the mainframe computers either by using a direct connection or by using a local or a wide area network. So in addition, the software interface programs also will be required. So these software interfaces which we are going to use, they will be including the file transfer systems, editors, word processors and a wide variety of multiple type of programs which are going to facilitate the portability of the user programs and different machine architectures. That means invariant of the type of architectures, we should be able to move the programs from one system to another system. So these all should be supported as the hardware resources in a modern computer. The OS handles allocation and deallocation of the resources when we are executing the programs. The OS is supported by multiple other application softwares. The mapping of the algorithmic data structures along with the hardware architecture, it is done by the operating systems. Efficient mapping will lead to better source codes. The mapping of the algorithms and the data structures onto the machine architecture, it will include the processor scheduling, memory map, interprocessor communication, etc. So all these activities of the operating system, you can observe it is depending upon the architecture of the system. So when we have the optimal mappings, we will also have the computer architecture very well supported by it. So when these mappings are implemented, we are going to get an efficient compiler and operating system support. Parallelism, it can be exploited at multiple levels, like it may be the algorithm design time, or it may be the program time, the compile time, and the run time. So that means the parallelism at all these levels, they are actually forming the core of the parallel processing technology along with the operating system. Software support is very much needed for the efficient programs in the high level languages development. So the programs what we have written in a high level language must be first translated to object code by compilers. The compiler will assign variable to registers or to memory words, and it will generate machine operations which are corresponding to the high level language operators, which is producing machine code. A loader is used to initiate the program execution through the operating system kernel. The resource binding, it will demand the use of the compiler, assembler, loader and OS, all these softwares, so that it can commit the physical machine resources to the program execution. Programmers are sometimes forced to program hardware dependent features instead of the programming parallelism in a generic and a portable way. So we have to develop a parallel programming environment with architecture independent languages, compilers and software tools, so that there will be freeness in programming. So to develop a parallel language, first we have to go for its implementation and how it can be portable across different machines, and how it is compatible with different sequential languages, and how parallelism can be expressed in different ways, and also the most useful thing, it has to make the programming easy. So a new language approach, it has to have the advantages of all these, so that we can make use of explicit high level constructs for specifying parallelism. The compiler support can be in three steps, that is the preprocessor, the pre-compiler and parallelizing compiler. The preprocessor, it will be making use of sequential compilers and low level library of the target computer, so that it can implement the high level parallel constructs. The pre-compiler, it will require some program flow analysis, dependence checking. That means the dependence we have to check which is depending on which, so that it can be made independent and then it can be worked independently. And also limited optimizations, so that we can go for detecting where the parallelism can be applied. Then the third approach is the parallelizing compiler, which is nothing but we can go for developing a parallelizing or a vectorizing compiler which can detect the parallelism automatically, and then it is going to transform all the sequential codes into parallel constructs very easily. Here we can see the evolution of the computer architecture. The computer architecture, it is involving both the hardware organization and the programming or the software requirements. So a computer architecture can be imagined as the instruction set, which comprises of the system and the operation codes, the addressing modes, the registers, the virtual memory, all these things. So if we can imagine this from the hardware implementation point, the abstract machine is organized with the processors, caches, buses, microcode, pipelines, etc. So the study of architecture, it will cover both the instruction set architecture and also the machine implementation organizations. Here we can see the different architectures which has gone from evolutionary way and not the revolutionary changes. Evolutionary means slowly, it is not come suddenly, but it is evolved over a period of time. So if it was having some strength, it stood the test of time. Else, that particular technology would have been vanished. So here we can see the sustaining features and which were having some performance, they were retained and others were not. Here we can see that the von Neumann architecture, it is built as a sequential machine executing scalar data. So it started with the von Neumann machine, which was only executing the scalar data, which was fixed. And slowly we can see that the computer has been evolved. So where we had the sequential and the look ahead, so the look ahead were better, so the sequentials were left behind. So then we had the instruction fetching and execution overlaps and the functional parallelism. Among this, we went to functional parallelism because it was better. So like this, you can see when we come to the last level, these have given rise to a massively parallel processors. So the multi-computers, the multiprocessors, the processor arrays, the associative processors, all these are making up the massively parallel processors. So here the SIMD means the single instruction stream, multiple data stream. MIMD means multiple instruction stream and multiple data stream. So these are the different type of architectures which have been evolved with the time. So these are some interesting terms what we come across in the architecture. The look ahead means it is used for prefetching the instructions, so that there will be a overlapping of the instruction fetch as well as the decoding and the execution. When we do like this, that means we are enabling the parallelism. Functional parallelism, it is having two approaches. We can make use of multiple functional units simultaneously, or we can go for pipelining at various process levels. So when we go for processing at various levels, that means we have to make use of pipeline instruction execution and many other pipelining concepts. So pipelining is especially attractive, or it is very useful when we go for performing multiple identical operations, similar operations, and when we are having a vector data strings. Vector means when we have an array. So vector operations which are used in the looping and all, they will be making use of the scalar pipelining processes. Based on the instruction stream and the data stream, we can go for classifying a computer architecture. So this architecture is called as the Flynn's classification, given by Michael Flynn in 1972. This illustration over here, it is a conventional sequential machine which is called as a single instruction stream over a single data stream, that is SISD computers. This SISD here, it is having a uniprocessor architecture. That means we have only a single processing element, and out of this processing element we have one data stream and one instruction stream. The second architecture is the single instruction stream over a multiple data stream. Here you can observe we have multiple processing elements. Previously we had only one processing element, and that is why we had only one instruction stream and one data stream from the processor. But here you can see we have multiple processing elements, PE1, PE2 up till PEN. So these are connected to the control unit by making use of a single instruction stream, whereas it is connected to the memory by making use of multiple data stream. So here there is parallelism. That means the data is moving parallelly to the memory. But the instruction stream, what is there? It is only one. That means we are having only single instruction stream, but we have multiple data stream. So this is called as a SIMD architecture. Here we are having the multiple instruction stream over a single data stream, MISD architecture. This architecture, it is having the same data stream flowing through a linear array of processors. So we can see we have multiple processing elements here, the processor 1, processor 2 up till processor n. All of them are having a common data stream but different instruction streams. So the different instruction streams, what are there? These can be parallelized. So the architecture, it is also called as the systolic arrays because it is used in the pipeline execution of the some specific algorithms. So in the multiple instruction stream over a single data stream, we will be having multiple processing units and also multiple control units. So the one single control unit, it has been divided into multiple control units, and then we will be having multiple instruction stream but only one data stream. In the multiple instruction, multiple data stream architecture, we will be having many control units and also many processing elements. So the communication between the control unit and the processing element, the instruction is being passed from the control unit to the processor, and the data stream will be having the data being moved from the processing element to the memory, from the memory to the processing element. So this type of architecture in which we are having the processor control unit, it is associated with each ALU in the parallel. So then it is called as a MIMD architecture. So these are connected by a very fast bus so that communication happens very quickly. Superscalar architecture is also coming under MIMD. So here we will be having multiple execution units so that the multiple instructions can be processed in parallel. Now we shall see some of the system attributes which are affecting the performance. So those are the clock rate and cycles per instructions, or it can be instructions per cycle. When we are calculating or when we are doing some work on the system, several times are there. But for us, the most important one is the processor time. So we are going to consider only the CPU time as the important factor here. The CPU will be driven by a clock with a constant cycle time, which is called as the tau. So the inverse of this clock cycle time, it is called as the clock rate, which is given by the frequency, which is equal to 1 by tau, and it is measured in terms of megahertz. So the size of the program, it will be determined by instruction count in terms of the number of machine instructions which are executed in the program. Different machine instructions, they will require different number of clock cycles. So the cycles per instruction, it is an important parameter which is used for measuring the time needed for executing each of these instructions, which also indicates that if I am having very short clock cycle time or a large number of cycles if they are included in 1 second, that means more operations can be performed per unit time. So the CPI is a very important parameter. So the CPI is an average, that is average value with respect to a given instruction set and a given program mix. So we can calculate the average CPI over all instruction types if we know their frequencies of appearance in a program. So we can estimate the average CPI only when we go for a large amount of program code tracing, and it has to be done over a very long period of time. So if IC is the number of instructions in a given program or the instruction count, the CPU time, that is capital T in seconds per program, it can be calculated as IC into CPI into tau, where tau is the inverse of the cycle time in the clock rate. A memory cycle can be considered as the time required to complete one memory reference. A memory cycle will be usually k times the processor cycle tau. So the k will depend on the speed of the cache and memory technology and processor memory interconnection which we are using. So the previous equation 1.1 what was there, now it can be substituted as T is equal to IC into P plus M into K into tau, where P is number of processor cycles, M is number of memory references, and K is the ratio between memory cycle and processor cycle. So IC is the instruction count and tau is the processor cycle time. So here we are replacing the CPI, that is the cycles per instruction, with P plus M into K. So this CPI, it is depending upon the components P, M and K. So over the entire instruction set, we can make use of these three components and then go for determining what is the total time required for the execution. The processor speed, it is often measured in terms of million instruction per second, that is MIPS. This will depend upon a given processor. So the MIPS rate, it is going to vary with respect to the clock rate, that is the frequency F, the instruction count IC and cycles per instruction of a given machine. In science and engineering, when we have heavy use of floating point operations, we make use of a term called as floating point operations per second. That means this floating point operations per second is a lot number of operations within 1 second. We can prefix this with multiple type of calculations like the gigaflop, teraflop or a petaflop. The multiple floating point operations what we can conduct can be understood by one example. Suppose I have an algorithm which is used for multiplying n cross n matrices. Say suppose this algorithm requires 2n to the power of 3 minus n number of operations. So if I take 100 into 100 matrices, then the number of m flops, that is megaflops, can be calculated as 2n to the power of 3 minus n divided by 0.35. So totally 5.714 megaflops, that means mega floating point operations are conducted when we are going for finding the product of 200 into 100 matrices. So if it is done in 0.35 seconds, if it is completed in 0.35 seconds, so this is the number of operations what has been completed. The number of programs a system can execute per unit time, it is called as the system throughput, WS. WP, it is the CPU throughput. This WP, it will always be greater than WS because the system will be having additional overheads by the input and output, compilers and the operating systems. If the CPU is kept busy in a perfect program interleaving environment, then the WS will be same as WP. But this is never going to happen because the system overhead often it is going to cause an extra delay and the CPU may be left idle for some cycles. Ideal behavior of the system is not possible because 100% of the time cannot be dedicated to all the computations of the algorithm. So efficiency will always be between 0 and 1 because if it is 0, of course it is of no use, but if it is 1, it is ideal, which is not possible, but it will be between 0 and 1. It depends upon the overhead of all the elements which are associated with the parallel execution of the system. So the execution rate of n processor system, it is measured in terms of floating point operations per second. The speed up, it is given as how faster in an actual machine n processors compared to 1, how it is going to perform that workload. So the ratio T1 by T infinity, it is called as the asymptotic speedup. The efficiency, it is the fraction of the theoretical maximum speedup achieved by n processors. So these are the different attributes which we are going to see for a system. How well we can program a computer, it depends upon the programming environment which is provided to the system. So the conventional uniprocessor computers, they are programmed in sequential environment. And then we are going for parallel programming, where we'll have multiple instructions executed at a given time. So when we are using a parallel computer, we are going to desire a parallel environment where this parallelism is automatically generated. So the language extensions or the new constructions what we have, it has to be developed so that everywhere the parallelism has to be easily detected, and parallelism has to be done at various granularity levels by many intelligent compilers. Apart from the parallel languages and the compilers, the OS also has to be extended. It has to be expanded so that it has to support parallel processing. The OS, it should be able to manage the resources so that all of them can be supported parallelism. Important issues which are included in the parallel scheduling of concurrent processes, inter-process communication and synchronization, shared memory allocation and shared peripheral communication links, all this has to be handled by the intelligent OS. Now we will see implicit parallelism and explicit parallelism. Whenever we write any program by using some high-level language like C, C++, Fortran or Pascal, when we are using conventional language, this is called as a implicit approach. So here the sequentially coded source program, it will be translated into parallel object code by parallelizing compiler. So this compiler should detect the parallelism and it has to assign the target machine resources. This compiler approach, it is applied in programming shared memory multiprocessors. With parallelism being implicit, success relies heavily on the intelligence of the parallelizing compiler. So this particular approach, it requires less effort on the part of the programmer. As can be seen in this picture, this is the implicit parallelism where we have the high level language program written. So this source code, it is parallelized by using a compiler. And then we are making use of a sequentially coded program which is translated into parallel object code by a parallelizing compiler. And then we have the execution in the runtime. So this type of parallelism, it is called as a implicit parallelism. In the explicit parallelism, here we are going to have the programmer should put more effort to develop a source program by using the parallel dialects of C, C++, Fortran or Pascal. Whatever the programming language is there, by using those programming languages, he has to write the parallel codes. And the parallelism is explicitly specified in the user programs. So here we are going to concentrate on the user, how intelligently he is going to write the program in a parallel way, making use of the high level language programs. But in the implicit parallelism, there the onus was on the parallelizing compiler, which took the heavy load of parallelizing the code. But here the programmer has to take all the effect of parallelizing. So the compiler, it is going to preserve the parallelism, and whenever possible it is going to assign the target machine resources. So here the compiler, it is going to act differently where it will have less work because the source code is already divided according to the parallel codes. So as can be seen here in the explicit parallelism, here the source code, that means the programmer has to take all the effort of writing the programs in terms of parallel C, parallel Fortran, parallel Lisp, like this. So the compiler, it is going to preserve the concurrency. That means whatever the parallelism the programmer has written, the same thing will be retained by the compiler, and then it will be going for the object code generation, and then finally the execution will be done. So the special tools are required when we go for a environment friendly programming. So some of the tools which are used for friendly programming are the parallel extensions of the conventional high level languages. The other support which is required is the integrated environment, which is going to make use of the tools for providing different levels of program extractions, validation, testing, debugging, and tuning. The performance prediction and the monitoring, visualizing support, and also the measurement performance and the graphics display and animation, all these things they will be required for the computational results. So that's all for today's class. Again, meet you in the next class. Thank you.